Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast midweek edition. Steve Palazzolo here with Barry Sanders. A Barry Sanders, what is that? Jersey sweatshirt deal.
Yeah. Jersey sweatshirt.
Sam Monson Sanders. Looks good. Where'd you get that?
It's one of those, vintage throwbacky things that I can't remember the name of the people that make it, but it's one of, I don't know.
Do you think they have a Mark Brunell?
I doubt it. I know they have a Dan Marino. They have
Nobody cares about Marino.
a Jerry Rice.
No.
They have a
Doesn't move
Walter
the needle.
Payton.
Nobody cares about Walter. Where's Brunell?
I don't think he made the cut, to be honest.
I'm looking up. I'm going to find some sort of retro Brunell jersey or something to wear.
But they're those, throwback jersey sweatshirt things. It's nice. The only weird thing is the arms are very short.
Relatable.
Really short.
That's by design?
I'm not sure.
By design, like 3/4 sleeves, or you just have freakishly long arms?
So I do have long arms, but they're not that freakishly long.
Oh, you're a freak.
Like,
What's that feel like, being called a freak?
Fine. I think initially they were longer. I think somehow somebody shrank the arms, and the rest of it survived.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating. Anyway, it's a pretty cool shirt. I'm wearing my Creep Back Toward Average shirt. You might not be seeing the PFF shop as much anymore. We got proper cloth coming in the coming weeks.
On the way.
We're going to be looking a little classier.
Dapper.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. All right, it's our midweek pod. It's our mailbag edition. And we've decided to create our own topic here, Sam. Contract year players. Which players in a contract year are tearing it up? And let's do a little, is it real? Is it fake? How should the market be treating these guys once they hit there? You want to do that? It's a lot of defensive players, a lot of breakout guys on the defensive side of the ball.
I mean, it's just interesting, right? Because we always do this anecdotally, right? It's like, oh, this guy's having a great season. It's like, oh yeah, contract year for him. Let's look at all the guys that are in contract years and find out how many of these ridiculously surprising seasons are all people, or ridiculously surprising career years, coincidental career years, are all contract year people.
All right, let's start on the offensive side of the ball first, and then it's all defensive players. Let's start with Dak and the Cowboys. We spend a lot of time talking about quarterbacks. I don't want to spend too much time on him. I want to get to the defensive guys. I want to get to the fun guys. But with Dak, I remember tweeting before the season, I said, if Dak has a breakout year, does it say more about him or Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys? I think Dak has played better. I think he's played at a level more closely resembling his rookie season, which was his best season to this point. But the advanced analytics, from QBR to any other completion percentage metric you want, to EPA, the Cowboys offense, passing offense, is top 5 in the NFL. So is Dak Prescott playing like a top 5 quarterback? Therefore, that's what he is? Or has he been elevated by his system and scheme, or a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. It's also worth pointing out that he's heading in the wrong direction at the moment.
True.
He hasn't had a PFF grade above 80 since week 7. The very first game of the season was the only game he's had above 90, and that was against the Giants. So, started the season absolutely on fire.
Against the Giants, Redskins, Dolphins.
Yeah, and even against the Dolphins, he wasn't that good. But started the season incredibly, and then since then, he's come back down to earth, and like I say, he's kind of heading in the wrong direction. It's not that the last few games have been bad, it's just that they haven't been as good as that level. So he's settled back more towards the Dak Prescott that we know and expect, crept back towards average from the positive end.
I will say, I always defend the guys that got to play in the weather and conditions. Playing at New England in a rainstorm where guys weren't catching the ball that well.
Sure, so that's one of his worst grades.
Hurts.
On the other hand, at Detroit, in the dome.
Oh, he's been in domes quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, I think he's going to end up back in Dallas. By the way, I think how many outdoor games? 1, 2, 3, 4 outdoor games this entire season. That is a factor over time. Plus, if that's the only time you have to leave.
The roof was open when they played the Vikings.
Oh.
That's practically in the tundra.
No. I think that doesn't count.
No?
No. Because the roof is only open if you have pristine conditions.
Right, but surely there's a bunch of outdoor games that are pristine conditions as well.
Oh, yeah, there absolutely are.
outdoors.
But especially at this time of year, You watch one game where guys could barely even hold the ball, and then you go to the dome game where everything's perfect.
So
you just see there's a massive difference.
Terrible conditions can only occur outdoors. On the other hand, it being outdoors does not mean the conditions are bad.
Oh, no, I agree. Of course. It just, you have an opportunity to maybe, if you get a run of bad weather games, it can skew your stats because that could be 3 or 4, could be a third of the season, so, or a quarter of the season. So what are your overall thoughts of Dak? We came into the year saying, look, he's one of those mid-tier quarterbacks, which isn't an insult. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's upper mid-tier quarterback. Okay.
Mid-tier.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
And if you get the right ecosystem, play caller, receivers getting open, you make everything incrementally better around him. You can take those guys and they can have top 5 or top 10 seasons. Is that what we're seeing? Or has Dak always been a top 10, top 8 to 10 quarterback? We just happen to see 2 years, 17 and 18, where everything was so bad around him that he couldn't elevate them. Is this the real Dak or the mid-tier Dak being elevated?
I think, honestly, he's settling somewhere in between those two things so everyone thinks that his situation has been fantastic, right? Because they work purely on the basis of personnel. So the offensive line for years has been one of the best in the NFL. If you make the sample size large enough, you would say that Dallas have had the best offensive line in that stretch.
Yeah.
So he's always had a good offensive line by and large. He's always had a good running game by and large, again, because the offensive line has been so good. Elevated when you get Zeke Elliott, who is a better back than, a Alfred Morris or a Darren McFadden or whatever. The receivers haven't always been great, but they haven't been bad, and they got really good when they got Amari Cooper in there. So his situation in terms of personnel has always been pretty impressive, but from a scheme standpoint, it's been rough. And this year is the first year where I think that's been different, and Kellen Moore's come in and actually added some of the stuff that is free wins from a schematic point of view. Consequently, Dak looks slightly better this year than he has in the past. I think he's also playing slightly better because of that, but I would say this year is more driven by the fact that they've fixed some of the they picked up some of the low-hanging fruit from just fixing basic schematic things that work across the board. So he looks a little bit better.
Yeah, your play can change a little bit too. It's not all completely static.
Right.
But a good scheme and a good system and guys to throw to will help you play a little bit better. And if they're open a little bit more, that helps. And if you're, doing a couple things better from a play calling standpoint, all of that stuff adds up. And I think that's where we are with Dak. I think you could say the same thing about Kirk Cousins.
Sure. I mean, I think those kind of things can have compounding effects, right? So when you improve some of the schematic easy wins, you can make a guy look better just by those, right? If he plays no better whatsoever, you can make him look a lot better because the statistics will look better because the offensive production as a whole is higher. So you can make a quarterback look better simply by fixing the scheme around him, but having those easier wins also gives him more opportunities to make some plays and value add himself. So it can kind of have this compounding effect where he will look better from a baseline because things around him are schematically superior, and that gives him an opportunity to add more value himself. So it's like a 2-for-1 deal where he will look better and play better at the same time, basically doubling the effect that it has.
And that's where we are on Dak. Even though his passer rating is not career year worthy based off of some interceptions, some of which I think are a little bit fluky. It's 8.5 yards per attempt. He's almost got 4,000 passing yards already. It's been more of a high volume passing attack and a very efficient one. So I think it's still fair to say this is a career year production-wise for Dak Prescott.
His yards per attempt figure is half a yard better than any other year of his career, and he leads the NFL this season in terms of drop passes. No quarterback has had more passes dropped than Dak Prescott, so his numbers should be better even than they are right now, which would go a large way to making that passer rating bump ahead of his rookie season.
All right.
So I think overall we are looking at a legitimate career year from Dak, but I don't think it's enough of a departure from any other season to be saying this is a completely new quarterback. There's so much more untapped potential in Dak Prescott. He can be this top 5 superstar. He can be another Patrick Mahomes. I think you're still looking at a guy who's now at the top end of that second tier of quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I think it says when you're in that second tier, if you do get the nice supporting cast and all that stuff, really good things can happen when you have that guy.
Yeah, so now you have to weigh up in terms of contract yes, he can definitely bring us where we need to go. On the other hand, that becomes a lot harder if all of our money is tied up in Dak. For the Cowboys, it's doubly so because all of our money is already tied up in the running back.
Right. I would say I'd put him in that Matthew Stafford level, right? Stafford, over time, has been right around 10th, 11th, 12th best quarterback.
I might
in the
put
NFL?
him more in. I want to go Matt Ryan, but Matt Ryan has been.
Ryan has year after year of top 8 finishes.
He does. He also, I think, is quite dependent on the cast around him. But he's shown that when the perfect cast is around him, he can get to top 1. I don't know if Dak can get there.
Bunch of dome guys inflating their stats. All right, let's get to the defensive side of the ball. A whole bunch of edge rushers. I think this is the position where you see a ton of career years. D Ford last year. Olivier Vernon earns that huge contract in a contract year where he went from good to great. Hashtag good to great. Guys on this list, Clowney's kind of making that step. Jadeveon Clowney with the Seattle Seahawks. Bud Dupree, we talked about a few times with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Shaq Barrett, Tampa Bay Bucks. Sacks all over the place for him. And then Eric Armstead, interior edge, kind of a hybrid player for the San Francisco 49ers. Let's discuss those guys. So they're all going to hit the market. Clowney franchised this year. Do you buy into breakouts here, or you're thinking, okay, contract, just be careful?
It makes you wonder how much these guys are half-assing their career right up until the contract year.
See, I don't want to accuse anybody. I just think if from a training standpoint, when you're training for your contract year and hey, if this 16 games goes well, I really get paid, you go a little above and beyond in your preparation sometimes.
Yeah.
Because if you get caught, it's worth the money.
You're going there. Whoo.
As a former professional athlete, saw guys do that.
So I would like to officially distance myself from the comments made by my unfortunate co-host, Steve Palazzolo. All lawsuit letters should be directed solely to Stephen.
I'm not accusing anybody of anything.
Palazzolo.
Okay, maybe they just trained harder this offseason. The contract year mentality.
So which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with Clowney.
Okay.
I mean, this year's kind of similar to last year.
It is.
Excellent run stopper, good, not great pass rusher. Pass rush grade of 80.7, run defense grade of 81. They've dropped him into coverage 18 times, made a couple plays there, has an interception. It's kind of in line with where he's been these last couple years, other than that pass rush grade is just a tick better.
He's taking the contract year, concept to an even higher level because he's timing his best games for prime time.
That's the one.
So if you want to maximize the dollars coming your way from a contract year, right? A, show up massively just before you need to get paid. B, show up in that year the most on prime time where everybody's paying attention.
Although, how did Kirk Cousins even get paid? He's 0-8 on Monday Night Football.
Well, he got paid because he was a quarterback.
Oh, okay.
And he became available.
An available quarterback does.
But
get
against
paid.
the 49ers, 11 total pressures.
Yeah, so it's a tough one with Clowney. It's tough to say that this is a true career year because last year 88 grade was his highest. This year he's up to 89.7. If he stays at this pace, he'll be a low 90s guy. So technically career year, but it's really these last 2 years that he's elevated his game. And even though he only has 3 sacks, again, our pass rush grades are going to be more about how often you win, how quickly you win. He's obviously doing that at a higher level than he has in the past.
46 total pressure, so he's getting a ton of pressure even if he isn't necessarily getting sacks. And, he's made some big plays under the bright lights, which is what gets everyone's attention.
So Clowney is a case where he's gone from just a really good, solid player, perhaps elevated his game and started to live up to some of that number one overall hype from a couple years ago. When you look at Bud Dupree, he's gone from below average.
Well, this is more of a D Ford scenario.
Yes.
Where you weren't good at all. And now suddenly, here's a first-round player.
And D Ford's kind of carried it into this year. So I think if you are in an NFL front offices love comps. They just love comparable players. It helps paint the picture. Whether you're a draft prospect, hey, this guy reminds me of this guy because of this, this, and this. If you're looking for comparisons, using PFF grades and breakout years, I think D Ford has to be the guy.
Yeah. The other thing is they rank, by the way, 16 and 17 this year. Like, they rank right next to each other.
Fascinating.
Which is fun. The other thing they love is former first-round picks.
True. Very true. I'll get the most out of that guy.
Right. It is spectacularly difficult to get yourself crapped out of the league entirely if you were a former first-round pick. When it was, whatever broadcast it was, talking about Vernon Hargreaves, right? Vernon Hargreaves has been little short of an unmitigated disaster since he came into the NFL. And where's he now? Is it the Steelers? No, where did Hargreaves wind up? Who's he
Texans.
playing for right now? Texans.
He was just doubling Edelman every
right.
night. Too.
So he's on the, and they're talking about him on the broadcast, and they're saying, you just don't find guys like that on the street every day. Of course we snapped him up. This guy's a former first-round pick. You don't see guys like that available every day. You're like, well, the reason he's available is because he sucked. Like, you do find people like that on the street all the time. They just weren't former first-round picks. They have also been cut from their team because they're getting torched on a regular basis. Vernon Hargreaves has been cut.
Thank you.
I got you, yeah.
Sam got me a coffee today.
Vernon Hargreaves got cut because he was getting regularly lit up by anybody. The fact that he was a former first-round pick is simply color to the backstory. But NFL coaches, when you talk to them about it, they're like, you don't find guys with that quality available every week. So we snapped them right up.
When I'm a GM, I'll fall right into that trap.
Right. So my point is, with a guy like Bud Dupree or D Ford or whatever, they have not played at a level dramatically higher than a bunch of other people, right? But because they were former first-round picks, even if their current team decides, no way am I buying into that again, I'm going to let someone else take that chance, they're going to be like, you don't find that quality available every day. We're going to snap that right up.
So the Vernon Hargreaves thing, when he's on the open market, I'm willing to take that chance. There's a difference between that and like forking over a ton of money because Bud Dupree's a former athletic first rounder.
Right. I'm not saying it's everything, right? But this idea, just being a former first round pick buys you this level of cachet that you may not deserve. Anyway, the Bud Dupree thing, where it's interesting to me is that he's not hitting the heights that D Ford did a year ago. So D Ford led the NFL in pressures last season, or led edge rushers in pressures. Aaron Donald led all the NFL. But he had 78 total pressures on the year, which is the most of any edge rusher. Bud Dupree is up to 42 now, which is reasonable, but ranks, 23rd, tied for 23rd, just among edge rushers. So he's not reached that D Ford level of you've become the most prolific pressure-gaining edge rusher in the NFL, but he has dramatically boosted what we've ever seen from him in the past.
A big 42. Part of his pass rush grade, though, 4 forced fumbles.
Sure.
Those strip sacks have been, he only had 2 in his career, forced fumbles, that is, coming into the season.
And 42 total pressures is already tied for second in terms of his career.
Right.
And it's 4 shy of the best he's ever achieved.
Including the playoffs.
9 sacks is already 3 more than he's ever had in a season in the past. So it's a career year. I'm just saying he's not gone from, an absolute nobody to I'm now leading the league in total pressures the way D Ford did a season ago. We've gone from bad to good, but great is still a way away.
So buyer beware still.
I would still be scared of Bud Dupree in terms of buying into him as a finished product if he was available.
I think those guys, and we said this about D Ford, like if you're the Chiefs, like maybe just bring up, like you feel more comfortable if you keep him in the same ecosystem.
Right. Oh, I'm particularly, this is what the franchise tag was designed for, essentially, right? Is you get a free shot to say, all right, I'll buy in for a year.
Prove it one more time.
Show me one more time you're capable of doing it, and then we can talk long term.
You didn't put him on the list, but Donnell Hunter.
He's in a contract year? I didn't even know.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm confused because I wanted to do breakout players.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay.
Forget Donnell Hunter.
That's why I didn't put him on the list.
Yeah, this is a whole different. I got confused for a second.
Okay, all right.
Who did you put? Shaq Barrett.
So Shaq Barrett is interesting because he has kind of been a far more consistent player in terms of grading well, generating pressure in the past.
You know what his comparison is?
No.
To Marcus Lawrence. Smaller sample of good play. When given the opportunity for extended play, it's like, okay, now he's one of the league's best.
Sure. I don't. So where I disagree with that is I don't think, again, that he has gotten as good as as
No, that's fine. I mean, not everything's perfect one-to-one.
So Shaq Barrett's interesting because he's tied for the league lead in sacks now, right? 15 by our numbers. I don't know what he actually, half sacks.
I don't look at
that.
real sacks. I don't look at NFL sacks. I have no idea.
It's such a stupid system that I refuse to ever pay it any attention, right? He has sacked the quarterback 15 times. I don't care how small a number you can create that into when you start.
I don't care if other guys happen to be there at the same time.
Right. I don't care how small a number you can turn 15 into if you half count a bunch of his sacks. It's ridiculous to me. 15 occasions this season he has sacked the quarterback. That's the only number I'm interested in. He has 61 total pressures, which, like Dupree, is heading towards a career year. For him, it already is a career year. But the thing that's behind most of that is he has already got, 70 more pass rushes than any other season of his career.
Yeah.
Right? So he has got the most pressure he's ever generated, but a lot of that is he's just rushed the passer more. His pass rush grade is sort of just under 2 grading points higher than the best season of his career before, which is 2017 in Denver. So essentially, we've seen this guy play at this kind of level in the past. He hasn't had the opportunity to get all those pressures and all of those sacks. And the sacks are kind of, I don't want to say they're a mirage, but I don't think they're necessarily accurately reflecting just how good he's been as a pass rusher this season.
He's got the 4th most rushes in the NFL, 454.
Yeah. And bear in mind, 7 of those sacks came in 2 games against Carolina back when they were starting a disaster at tackle, and the Giants, who, Daniel Jones, Eli Manning, disaster. Offensive line hasn't been great. Sacks can come and go, right? And 7 of those came in 2 games. Shaq Barrett, I think, is a good, not great player. And as much as this is a contract year in statistical terms, sacks and pressures, or a career year in statistical terms, I don't know that we're seeing a dramatic departure in his baseline play. He's a good player.
Yeah, his grades look pretty similar across the board.
Right. He's a good player, but unlike some of these other guys, I don't think he's showing potential beyond what we already knew.
This season looks a lot like a Donnell Hunter type of season. A good, not great pass rush grade with a ton of sacks.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted to bring Donnell Hunter in.
Okay, well done. Slick.
As always, you don't pay for the guy that just had the sacks. Pay for the guy that had the strong pass rush grade, because that'll be more consistent.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't. You should be interested in Shaq Barrett if he hits the open market, but you probably shouldn't expect him to become one of the league's best pass rushers.
Yeah, well, again, it's like we said. Do teams understand why they're good, bad, or indifferent? Do you understand why a pass rusher is good? It's not because he has these 15 sacks this year. It's because he's got a pretty consistent track record of winning.
And particularly with the sacks, like if you're expecting him to be a 15-sack guy going forward, I suspect you'll be disappointed. Like this feels like his Brandon Graham season, the one year where where the sacks spike, and then he'll head back down.
Like Bryce Pop back in 97.
Exactly.
So Jags just overpaid for him.
I think you should definitely be interested in Shaq Barrett if he hits the open market, but I think if you're expecting him to be amongst the leaders in sacks every single season, you're going to end up being disappointed because I don't think he's ultimately that good. He's just good.
What about Eric Armstead with the 49ers? By our numbers, career high 11 sacks. Coming into the year, we had him with 9. However, similar to Shaq Barrett, he has a career high pass rush grade, which actually ties his pass rush grade from 2017. So not actually winning at a higher level than he did before. Sack totals could get inflated when you have Nick Bosa and you have a good coverage unit and you're around other good pass rushers. That's the other part of not getting sucked into the sack totals.
Yeah, and honestly,
he's playing better against the run as well.
That's the thing, right? Honestly, the biggest boost in his production this season has been his play against the run. Again, a lot like who was the middle guy? A lot like Bud Dupree, right? He's basically just at career year in terms of total pressures, but a lot of that is driven simply by how much he's been on the field. So he's been on the field more. They found his role. They found his role within that defense, and suddenly he's playing really well. He's also he's an interesting player, right? Because he's like 6'7", 290, and kind of a tweener, right, between interior player and edge rusher. And it's like, where do you end up putting those guys? do you turn him into an interior guy? Do you turn him into an edge rusher? And I think he's always been. I'm not entirely sure where we line him up.
See, I think that versatility is actually good.
Oh, I mean, that's definitely
like
good.
The Cam Jordan body,
right?
Longer body type, but same.
But it's always
size.
One of the issues, right? It's where do you end up playing? How do you deploy that guy to best get use of him? This season, he's been almost exclusively as a true sort of edge rusher, right? Outside of the tackle, like 300 of his 500 snaps. That's where he's been the majority of the time deployed. And has been playing really well. Particularly, I don't want to say it's easy, but you're going to get some advantageous plays against the run when you're 290 pounds playing on the edge.
Yep. All right, quick break to tell you about our friends over at Western and Southern. Do you have a pressing football question, Sam? You ask me questions all the time. It doesn't matter if it's football or financial wellness. The right questions will always give you the best chance for a win. Western and Southern has partnered with us here at PFF to give you a chance for an up-close and personal look at the X's and O's that'll lead you to both financial and football success. Looking for insight on your financial future? Need an inside the huddle tip? Head to westernsouthern.com/ask-Chris to ask Western and Southern and PFF your most pressing questions. You could even win tickets to the big game. That's westernsouthern.com/ask-Chris. That's Chris Collinsworth, C-R-I-S. Ask Chris your most pressing questions.
Yes.
You should just email him.
I mean, I could just wait till he comes in the office.
Nah, he doesn't like talking to you.
No? Okay.
No.
Other players that are having career years, DJ Reader, we've talked to him up a bit this season in terms of this is a real legit career year for him.
And much needed in that front.
He's been a dominant run defender for a while. He's added pass rush to his skills. He's a genuine force up front. And turns out it's a career year for the man.
It certainly is.
Looking to get paid, contract year.
Is he similar to Shaq? Another small sample, good player that has really elevated his game this year.
Yeah,
even though we said Shaq's elevated it statistically, but Reader, grading-wise, just winning a ton more this year.
He is, and I think the difference for him is that he has proven that at 350 pounds, he's a viable pass rush presence.
Right.
We always knew that he was a good run defender, and this year that is a big part of his jump forward. Is he's gotten even better against the run. But this year he's also proven that he's got legit pass rush chops. He's already got more, 5 more total pressures than he had any other season of his career, and that's on 80 fewer pass rushes than a year ago. So he's generated pressure at a significantly higher rate this year than he did a season ago. And now you're looking at him saying, okay, sure, he may be 900 pounds, but he's viable on passing downs, and that changes everything when you're talking about big interior players.
All right, let's wrap it up with Jimmy Ward. So another 49er, a real breakout year. I mean, if you watch the 49ers, chances are you see Jimmy Ward flying around making plays, especially in recent weeks. He's been around the ball, 372 snaps at free safety. So he's in that, Seattle cover 3 scheme, playing a ton of free safety. And, when you're just watching broadcast, when you have the Earl Thomas free safety and they come flying onto the screen, there's not a lot of guys that do that. It feels like Ward is doing that quite a bit, making a ton of plays, 8 pass breakups so far this season.
Yeah, he's made some ridiculously good plays. He's been, just on the fringes of making some huge ones, and they've all broken his way this year. And honestly, sometimes when you're talking about safeties, you're at the mercy of those plays, right? It's a game of inches, and safeties, more than a lot of positions, are the ones that are a hair either side of making a ton of plays or just getting beat. And he's been on the right side of a ton of those plays this year.
So is that the risky deal? So the last 2 years, 54 grade in 2017, 55 last year, up to 89.1 this year.
Yeah.
It's by far his best coverage grade. It's his best run defense grade. He's making a ton of plays. He's never really missed a ton of tackles. There's something to that.
Sure.
Usually if you're not missing tackles as a safety, you'll grade pretty well. The fact that he hasn't graded well means, okay, he was getting beat at some point. But he's also a guy who came out of Northern Illinois, and it was versatility was the thing that worked for him and against him. He was a corner. He could play in the slot. He could play strong safety. He could play all these different things. Has he truly settled in as all right, he could play this true free safety type of role? This is where he's at his best.
Yeah, that's the tough decision, right? Is so much of safety play is role, and where you're actually look at LaMarcus Joyner, right? he's been moved all around the secondary, and we know he's been really good when in a specific position. And if you bring him in and change his position because he's done other things, you completely change the expected level of play. Then there's the fact that we know that secondary players are just more volatile in terms of play because they're like I say, they're subject to a bunch of other factors, right? And you can be a couple of inches away from making the plays, and if they all break the other way, you suddenly look bad. You're not as good. So he's the one that I would be most concerned about committing big money to, just because you know there's a bunch of other things at play. If, on the other hand, you have an opening at the spot where he's played really well, it's worth a gamble.
A fascinating player. He's had multiple years where the most common position for him has been outside corner. A couple years or at least 1 year where the most common position was slot corner, and 2 years where his most common position is free safety. So he has literally played all over the secondary. That versatility can work both for and against you. I think LaMarcus Joyner is a really good comp, a guy that kind of settled in as a free safety type. And, I do like a free safety that has slot corner type of skills, but if that's where you're performing best, it's probably best to keep a guy there.
So somebody asked a question that's really interesting. I'm going to hit you with it, see if you have any idea what the answer is. So everyone talks about play action as being the sort of cheat code, including us, right? Just run more of it, it works. So this is true, by the way, just to start this off. Play action is definitely a thing that works against all defenses. Everybody should be running more of it. It just functions, right? But somebody asked, let me find out who it is so I can credit them. Vamp, Steve. Vamp, I'm finding the guy's name.
Run more play action. I'm fascinated. I can't wait to hear what this play action
Here we go.
question is.
Oh, no, that name is a nightmare. Colton Reynoshek on Twitter asks, are there any defenses that play well against play action? So, all right, I'm not going to read the rest of it, but that's the question. So, yes, there are, is the answer, right? There's 2 of them, in fact.
Oh, you looked this up?
Yes. Do you know who they are?
What are you using to judge them?
Play action on.
But are you using stats or are you using coverage grade?
PFF grade. And EPA.
Patriots and 49ers.
1 out of the 2.
Patriots?
No.
49ers?
Yes. So I think that's interesting, right? The 49ers are one of those teams that use play action as much as anybody. Their entire offense is based off it, maybe consequently or maybe coincidentally. Who knows?
I would have
thought their
thought
defense is the best in the NFL at it. There are 2 defenses who have a negative EPA per play allowed versus play action.
Steelers?
Yes. Well done, Stephen.
How about that?
So, here's the interesting thing, right? Those are the only 2 teams essentially that have a good PFF grade, and they're in the 70s. If you flip it and you say, all right, no play action, what do the grades look like? You take play action away, and basically everybody is in the 90s.
Interesting.
In terms of offense. Everybody has success when you're running play action.
I would have guessed maybe a more man coverage heavy team would have some play action success because you have fewer guys with their eyes on the ball. They're just covering their man, and it's less relevant in those situations. You could still move defenders because you're playing man, and there's lurk players and extra defenders to move, but maybe I would have guessed.
So 17 teams have a higher grade than the best defensive grade against play action. So when you take away play action, there's no play action. 17 defenses have a higher grade than the best graded team against play action. That's how effective play action is.
Yeah.
When you look at that in terms of EPA per play, we said there were 2 teams that allowed a negative EPA per play against play action. There's 26 that allow some kind of negative against no play action. So again, it just works. Run more play action. The moral of the story.
Good question.
Always.
Good stuff.
It is a good question.
Some people asking about Ron Rivera and the Carolina Panthers. We'll do that separately on the YouTube channel, I assume.
No, I'll cover it here.
We'll touch on Ron Rivera.
Yeah.
He's out.
He is.
In Carolina, a lot of sweeping changes.
Yeah.
At the top. He's been a very solid, good NFL head coach.
He has. And, you look at the situation in Carolina this year. Cam Newton goes down, obviously, missing.
Right.
Their franchise quarterback. When you're firing a guy midway through a season when they've lost their franchise quarterback, you're immediately starting from a point of that feels pretty harsh. So
felt like something that was more inevitable than anything. And I do think he's added stability to that franchise, right? But is it kind of like, all right, we kind of know what you are at this point. This happens in college all the time. you're just not satisfied with good. How do you get that guy for the next step? So it's a little risky, but that's what the move feels more like with the Panthers.
Well, here's the thing. I think what it is not a reflection on Ron Rivera as a coach, but a reflection on where David Tepper, the owner of Carolina, intends to take this franchise, right? He's essentially using this as an opportunity to sweep the board and start making changes. Because in addition to firing Ron Rivera, he has said that they're going to be hiring a bunch of new front office positions, right? Assistant GM, a vice president of football operations or something like that. They've had ads up for analytics interns. You know, this is a team that is now heading in a new direction in terms of data-driven, analytics-heavy stuff. And it's not, I don't know that it's that they think Ron Rivera doesn't suit that approach, you know, that they think he's just not a fit with that stuff. It's just that, you know, if we're making all these other changes, let's make a change at head coach while we're at it.
What's happened in baseball is if you are doing that top-down approach, right, we have a general manager that's analytically driven. We have analysts who are using that mindset. Well, the coach has to implement what those guys are doing, not just from, you know, the GM's making player personnel moves, but when it comes to if you are going to use the numbers on fourth down decisions and in game theory, game management, and all that stuff. I'm not saying you're trying to get a puppet there, but in baseball, they've worked hard to find somebody's coughing out there. They've worked hard to find managers that will implement stuff from the top, and you know. In that sense, it kind of, if you are Tepper and you are the Panthers, it makes sense to get your guys in there that you feel like you're going to execute everything from top to bottom, even though Rivera's been good.
And the other thing is, I honestly think the way they're doing it is actually, it does Rivera a favor. So if you're going to get rid of him in amongst all these changes, doing it now helps him more than doing it at the end of the season along with everybody else, right? You essentially set him up as the front runner for any new position that comes along in a way he wouldn't be if there was everybody else available as well.
It'll be interesting because a lot of, remember last season, man, the NFL copycat league stuff. Last year, it's like, all right, everybody needs offensive coaches. Any offensive coach who had a coffee or a beer with Sean McVay is in the mix. Ron Rivera is an old school defensive coach.
Are any of them working out, by the way?
I mean, Zach Taylor just won his first game.
Yeah. Like Green Bay are winning, but it's not like the Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers thing appears to have dramatically changed anything that happened a year ago.
I think the defense has been a factor. I think the Packers went from underachieving a little bit to kind of just achieving.
Right. So
there's something to that.
And the Aaron Rodgers criticisms are all the same, right? It's not like
it's not like that. It's not like that offense has been
transformed and everything's solved, and we're no longer having the Aaron Rodgers conversation. It's exactly the same as it was. It's just a new guy.
But I've heard people suggest Ron Rivera to Dallas if things don't work out with Jason Garrett, and maybe you keep Kellen Moore. I do think there's a world where there's this completely separate, here's this defensive-minded head coach, leave the offense to stuff. We see this in college all the time. Like Nick Saban's done a pretty good job of this through the years. He's a defensive coach. I'm going to let the offense be creative and aggressive and do what they do and kind of separate things. I don't think you need to get an offensive head coach now just to be good on offense. You can get a defensive guy here too.
What about candidates for this Carolina job? Because the one that leaps out to me as just fascinating and intriguing is Greg Roman. Greg Roman, who has a track record now of crafting an offense around a specific type of player. So think back to 2012, Colin Kaepernick. You know, now the supporting cast in that 49ers team was pretty insane as well. Like the offensive line was dominant, the scheme.
Defense was really good too.
So it's not all him, right? But you have taken a guy with a specific skill set and said, we are going to play to your strengths and we're going to minimize your weaknesses. Lamar Jackson this year. It's Greg Roman's system again. It's we are going to create an offense that suits you. We are not going to ask you to play Joe Flacco. We are actually going to create an offense that makes you look as good as you can possibly look. The Carolina Panthers have had Cam Newton for years. Now, I don't know what that would look like in Greg Roman's offense, but I really want to find out.
I don't know if you're making sweeping changes from the top in Carolina. I don't think Cam Newton's a part of that.
I think maybe not, but like they're not gonna be in a position that the Bengals or other teams are, where it's like, all right, we're gonna get one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. It's an immediate, obvious transition.
No, but
you're gonna have to go looking.
But I think if you're Carolina and you're doing it from an analytical approach, something's gonna point you toward
Will Grier.
No, something's going to point you toward not paying a quarterback, trying to do it through first contract quarterback, right?
Sure.
Whether it's Kyle Allen or Will Grier or the next guy that gets drafted.
But you still need a good one.
And not banking on Cam Newton and his injury history and saying, come on, Greg Roman, let's go run Cam Newton 10 to 15 times a game. I just don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah, I would be fascinated to see Cam Newton in an offense that has a track record of tailoring to those kinds of skills, right? A guy who does bring an incredible amount of value on top. Plus, I mean, the other thing is Cam Newton's been busted up for years, right? You need a healthy Cam Newton before you can even start thinking about
that's the point.
What the offense looks like.
Are you even going to do that?
Right. But I would be fascinated to see him paired with that offensive system, because there aren't too many coaches that are prepared to completely do that, to craft an offense that actually tailors to the guy's skill set.
All I know is, I saw somebody say it on Twitter the other day, more than one way to work in the NFL, to build winners in the NFL. We see defensive coaches have success, offensive coaches, we see different types of schemes, systems, focuses, team building stuff. The season's fun, but we're starting to get into that fun off-season team building stuff.
Here's Carolina's problem, though. Draft position, right? Because as much as maybe the exact spot you're picking doesn't make a huge amount of difference, when you look at where all the top quarterbacks are drafted, draft position is an important factor. And they are currently scheduled to pick, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
somewhere
7,
in the
8,
middle.
10, 11, 12, 13. So, they're not going to be set up in a way that the Bengals are, where it's like, all right, we had a terrible season, we're looking to make sweeping changes, and oh, look, here's Joe Burrow. We can take our franchise quarterback.
You don't have to get your quarterback immediately. And again, if you're in it for the long haul, here's what San Francisco did a couple years ago. They signed Kyle Shanahan. They signed John Lynch. Here's your 6-year contract. You have time. And they didn't have to. People wanted them to draft Mitchell Trubisky. He was the guy a lot of people they didn't. They waited. They got creative. They said, okay, Garoppolo's going to be our guy. We're going to go get him. They didn't have to rush to get a quarterback.
Sure, but they're now in a position where they are struggling for answers at that position, because you're probably not going to keep Cam Newton around, right? You can't really start Will Grier, having never seen him.
My point too was,
really going to be able to start Kyle Allen, given how he's playing at the moment.
What's Cam Newton's trade value?
I don't know. I have no idea. Is he even healthy? Again, it's back to is he healthy? Can he play?
I think somebody's going to want Cam Newton. All right, there you go. Ron Rivera out, and a lot of interesting changes to take a look at.
Poor Riverboat Ron.
Yeah, he got that. Before the all the analytics moves. He was Riverboat Ron. He was the guy going for it all the time. Cam Newton has 1 year left on his contract, 2020. Mm-hmm. I think there's trade value there.
I mean, either way, I think he's probably not playing in Carolina next year, which is my point.
I think if they're taking the analytical approach, they're saying, we're not going to pay him big money. Somebody's going to want him, though. Tennessee, the Bears, the Jaguars, whoever it is. Some of these teams that the Bucks, some of these, that's in the division, but
Cam and Matt Nagy's offense would be fun.
Yeah, I would try to flip him and just redo the whole thing.
Okay.
If I'm in Carolina.
Anyway,
Also,
I think ultimately
Panthers, I might throw a resume in for all those jobs that I'm unqualified for.
Well, yeah, there's a bunch of them. They should definitely throw one in.
Which one do you think I should go for?
I think you should go
assistant GM. I mean, we've talked about that. I could start as an assistant.
I'd like to see you go for the analytics intern job.
Well, I'm not qualified for that.
This is true. You do have the. I liked. Let me see if I can find it. The exact line on the sort of requirements, the ad. Here it is. Where is it?
This is good podcasting.
Ability to communicative effectively in speech and writing. It's very important.
I can do that.
You have the ability to communicative effectively.
I can communicative. Mm-hmm. Hey, don't make fun of my potential future employer here.
I'm making fun of the comedy in the ad.
Oh, okay.
If you're going to request the ability to communicate effectively, you should probably be able to communicate that.
What if I just go in and I'm like, you guys can't even write properly, just call them out on this whole thing. And they'll be like, man, we love it. We like your vigor. Bring it
Although the problem about this is, even in this line, the ability to communicate effectively in speech and in writing on a technical and non-technical level.
Ooh.
I don't know that you can communicate effectively.
Flatten that database, Panthers. We can do it together.
Well, that's true. You can communicate effectively on a technical level as long as they're not paying attention to the actual content.
Yeah. Communicative.
Yeah. Like
right.
you could BS your way through it. It would be effective.
You've been doing it for years.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
You're good.
It would be effective. It wouldn't be right, but, it would work.
All right.
Anyway, that's the job I think you should go for. Football analytics summer intern.
Summer intern?
Yeah. Summer 2020. Weekly schedule varies.
Overqualified.
Based on off-season schedule and could include some weekends.
Let's wrap it up, Sam. We got to go. That's it.
All right.
The midweek PFF Mailbag NFL podcast. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. Thursday, we'll preview week 14 in the NFL. Ken, we're out.
Cue the music.